LGBTQ youth, and this is not just in hockey, but they don't make it into sport because they have such a barrier, in unaccepting like locker rooms before they even make it like out of teenage years. So I think the real thing is, it needs to come from the start, and it needs to come from every level. I am Georgie. I am a queer hockey fan from the UK. I live in London. I've never played hockey in my life. I Pre-COVID, I was having a Canadian friend teach me how to ice skate. That was going limited success, but was really fun. And yeah, that's very short summary.
I love it. How did Georgie get into hockey?
By accident. It was very much, I ended up on like a YouTube rabbit hole one evening and ended up on a video, and I think probably the first video was something like gruesome hockey video, like hockey injuries. And I was like, oh, what's this? And then watched a couple of those, obviously some gruesome like broken bones or whatever, like teeth on the floor, like, oh, he's picking up his teeth. And then that turned into like, oh, the best goals of the week, or like the best plays you've seen. And then that ended up like, oh, Sidney Crosby's best 10 moves you've ever seen. And I was like, oh, I've heard of that guy. Like, probably, I think he was probably the only player, like active player, that I'd heard of. I was like, oh, let me check this out. And then I was like, oh, this hockey thing's kind of cool. And yeah, that ended up with me like, okay, well, I'm gonna watch a game. So like picked a game at a weekend because they start at like midnight UK time normally.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'll pick a game. And I watched a game and I was like, this is really fun. And yeah, I've just been there ever since.
I love that so much. What do you love about the sport?
So I'm also a Formula One fan. So I
Okay.
like kind of speed and skill mix that you get in both of those sports. Like, and the skating, like, it's just so graceful, even though they're also about to then go and knock each other's teeth out. Like,
Yeah.
those like mix of things, like I really, really enjoy watching it. I really enjoy like the fast pace. Yeah, just it's a lot of energy.
I love that. How could hockey be better for you and for the queer community?
Yeah, I think for me, like, I feel like I'm such a fringe fan of the NHL. Like, yeah, that's how I started watching, and I do now kind of try and keep up to date with the UK, the Elite Ice Hockey League.
Mhm.
And that's also so my local club from where I'm from originally would be a team called the Coventry Blaze, and
Yes.
they do Pride nights. They sold Pride jerseys like not last year, pre-COVID, whatever that was. So I already feel like personally quite on the fringe. But like, having read stories and talked to some people, I know that like, LGBTQ youth, and this is not just in hockey, but they don't make it into sport because they have such a barrier, in unaccepting like locker rooms before they even make it like out of teenage years. So I think the real thing is, it needs to come from the start, and it needs to come from every level. Like, as a random UK fan, and even as a queer fan, I do feel quite included a lot of the time, as much as possible. And I really enjoy seeing Pride nights. And this year, like, I'm a Penguins fan, and they had their like joint Pride night with the Sabres, and I feel like a lot of that's come out of like Brian Burke being a part of the Penguins now, and that's great. I love seeing that, but equally, like, what, they can't even keep the pride tape on their stick for the actual game. Like,
Mhm.
the bar's really low, and I don't even think people are clearing it that well. So I'd like to see a lot more, to be honest. Yeah.
So knowing that the bar's been basically set on the floor, um, what keeps you in hockey?
I found a really good like online community.
Mhm.
with hockey. So like especially I think the first winter where I watched it like full time, like I was quite depressed, and like having that community there for like, there's a hockey game every night basically, so
Yeah.
every night there would be people I could talk to, there would be people I could watch something with, like there would be stuff for me to engage with and people that I could engage with, like and I wouldn't have to go outside, I wouldn't have to leave my sofa, but I could still talk to people. And like even through COVID, that community was still there, even when there wasn't hockey on. Like I've made friends with people, and that real like sense of community, which is what you get. Like I found that same community from playing sports my whole life as well, but you also get it from watching, and that's really what keeps me in, like those people and that like community that's there.
What gives you hope for queer people in the sport?
uh I think it, I'm quite a new fan, but I think 10 years ago there weren't pride nights, and there weren't people even taping their stick with a rainbow tape at all, and there weren't conversations happening. And even the news yesterday of the NFL player who came out, like I thought absolutely fantastic that he felt safe and comfortable enough in a professional sports setting, to be able to come out. And it's that kind of like positive representation, like that gives me hope, and that should give kids hope. And it's more of that kind of stuff, and more of this like positive conversation, and more of people trying to make a change and trying to make their voices heard, that I think it has moved on a lot from like when I was a kid. And I think it's still got a way to go, but it's definitely trending in the right direction.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
um
I mean, it was great, and you've said a lot that's really powerful. So
yeah, I like to talk a lot. I think the good thing, and the thing I've always enjoyed about watching or playing sports, is really the community that you get out of them. And that community has to come from it's not Gary Bettman who's creating that community. It's every single person who watches, plays, coaches, is a fan of any team at any level for any sport. But that change has to come from every single person, and it has to start right at the bottom and go all the way to the top, and start at the top and go all the way back down to the bottom. Otherwise it's not going to stick. But I think there's people doing that. And I mean, like, you're doing an absolutely fantastic job. And
thank you.
you know I came across you a while ago, like on Twitter or Instagram or something, and I was like, oh my god, here's a used to be a professional hockey player. He's super passionate about like LGBTQ, like promotion,
Yeah.
representation. And I think as like as an as a queer person, that you gravitate to finding people like that to look up to, and to listen to their voices and amplify them. And so as long as there's people out there doing that kind of thing, then yeah, I think it's only for the best.
Well, thank you, Georgie. And listening to you and listening to all these interviews just gives me hope, because there's so many of us, and we're all across the world, and we're going to shift culture. And I want to thank you.
No, thank you. Like, I think this is an amazing thing that you're doing. And yeah, like, you're right. If we're all over the world, then like the revolution's coming.